Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Earthen's Den. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking to you guys about racism in the workplace. Now, I know a lot of people have experienced this, especially if you are one of the minorities in the states of America, right? Or not even in America. I know we have some people in different countries and all over the world who has been tuning into this podcast. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much. I have no clue how I'm like this, this platform reaches that many people, but I'm just so thankful that you guys are tuning in and listening to me. And I've also seen with the analytics here, we've got some men on here as well, so that's dope. Like I said, I really wanted to transition over to women, and I wanted to speak to women. So the fact that this has kind of been a grounds for men and women is amazing, right? So I'm just very thankful that God is using me as a vessel, and I'm reaching these people. So shout out to you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to keep creating content for the subscription service as well as the main podcast, just because I appreciate the support and it is my service, right? So first things first, I want to start off with this basic concept because I know a lot of times a lot of people are, typically pressuring Black women into wearing our natural hair. Wear your fro, do this, do that. One of the things that I want to really express is that when you are in a corporate setting or when you're in a setting in which it's not really a diversified setting, right? It's not really a setting that allows for that level of expression, right? And when I say that level of expression, I'm talking about truth, right? You don't feel comfortable wearing your fro to work, right? Because let me tell you this, honestly, when you have a different type of hair texture, right? When your hair is a little kinky or more so coily than the loose curls, right? The water wave, that to me, the way I feel when I wear my hair at work, my natural hair out at work, it to me, it signifies oftentimes poverty. It's like, oh, you're not put together, right? It signifies the angry Black woman, right? You're angry. You look like you are one of those women who are just so strong and stand so strong for your people, right? There are so many stereotypes around the Black woman's hair. So a lot of times it's easier to just wear a wig to work. It's easier to just braid my hair down, put my wig on, go to work, wear a headband, or it's easier to just have braids, right? So dealing with that in the workplace oftentimes has a ripple effect with just the way we are in society, right? Because it's not really socially accepted. I know that a lot of women are stepping out and we are still being in that space, but what we're mostly seeing is wigs, right? We're mostly seeing wigs, and there's nothing wrong with it. I wear wigs, but I just had to address that because I know a lot of people are always like, oh, natural sisters, this and that. And that's fine. We can still be natural in our own space. But I just wanted to let you guys know who you may be in a position where you feel like Black women should be in that space all the time. I have to express the fact that the truth and the reality of the matter is that it's not something that is socially accepted, nor is it appropriate in certain climates and settings. And it is sad, right? It's definitely saddening and it's not right, but that's the truth, right? So I just wanted to start there. And I've experienced racism in a multitude of positions, right? And in a vast array of ways, whether it was comments, whether it was like, people doing things and saying things, right? Like I've experienced it to great extents, but it wasn't really until my current position now that I really was able to break down these social constructs and see racism in the workplace. And I think with the times being now more than ever, right, we are seeing the social injustices that are being demonstrated online. We're seeing it. We're seeing how, certain situations happen and there is no justice. So I think that those people who resonate with that level of hatred, they're really kind of in a space where it's like, okay, we can go out and we can stand in this position and we can do these things because we're not going to get in trouble for it, right? It's very clear that there is a very large system that supports this, right? So I think a lot of times in these positions, people don't feel like they can, or they don't feel like they have to be respectful, or they have to really check themselves and how they approach situations or with things that they say, because they know that there is not going to be any level of accountability, right? I was watching I Am Not Your Negro. It was a phenomenal film. I definitely I wish it was longer. I wish that James Baldwin was still a prominent activist in today's society, just because his works were so prolific and so honest. I loved it. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And I was actually surprised that, because a lot of times when it comes to these topics, a lot of the editors and film directors, they kind of cookie cutter and tiptoe around, you know what I mean? They kind of tiptoe around the truth of the matter, but I really felt as though they did a really great job with those depictions and those illustrations, as well as the conversation in that entire film, which was great. It was more so like a voiceover documentary type movie, but check it out. It's I Am Not Your Negro. It was great. I loved how he made an amazing, it was a truth. Honestly, I was going to say remark, but it was a truth, right? It was a fact. How when it comes to white people, a lot of times when there are situations that happen, right? And they're just dead wrong. I'm just going to just be honest. Like sometimes they just be dead wrong. The phrase "I'm sorry" is typically all it takes to kind of get them out of those situations. So there really is no level of accountability. Yet when it comes to Black people and people of minorities, typically when we make a mistake, there is no "I am sorry," right? There is no remorse for us, right? There is no, we are punished, right? We are boned and just like, you know what I mean? Beat to the bone for making mistakes. But it's almost like in that space, right? And in that culture, it's acceptable. Like, oh, just say you're sorry and it's okay. You know what I mean? And so it's almost like their ignorance and their immaturity is praised, right? Versus when it comes to minorities and it comes to Black people, you have to be excellent, period. There is no room for mistakes, right? You have to work twice as hard. Those things are real. So anyways, I've experienced it on a few different occasions. One of them being, there was a time where another coworker started. She wasn't Black. She was African, and she resonated with the African, you know what I mean, descent. So she was Black. She wasn't African American. She was African. She wasn't African American. She didn't resonate as a Black woman. She said she was African. So they were like, oh, you guys, oh yeah, Jalen, I seen you in there and I thought you were her. And I'm like, how? How? Like, we don't look alike. We don't and it was really upsetting because it's just not right. It's not okay for people to think that just because you're Black that, you know what I mean? You and this other person look the same. And I think what really frustrates me, and I love that they had this conversation on the Red Table Talk because it's so deep. It was about Black women and the stereotypes and the things that we have to go through. But I loved how they talked about how when these instances occur and when we get offended and we're kind of upset because we can clearly see and we know intuitively, right, that this is racism. Like, this is not, you know what I mean? Like, that wasn't just some little petty comment. It's like, no, you think that all Black people look the same, or you just felt like, you know what I mean, that was okay for you to make that comment when it was really just ignorant because we don't look the same. Like, how do you figure? You know what I mean? How do you figure? So it's just it's not fair, right? Because if I was to go to work and say, oh, Karen, I thought you were Susan. Oh, you guys are, you know what I mean? Like, do you see how that is? And then it's like when we stand in those positions, we are very much deemed as ignorant. We're very much being aggressive, right? When the truth is that I think if anything, there's a similar resemblance in some situations with that type, you know what I mean? Versus the other. And the thing is, that's upsetting, right? That's upsetting. Like, that's not okay. There were times where there were fingerprinting that we have to use to get into certain systems. And there was a coworker who told me, yeah, people of color, typically when it comes to these systems, you guys have to put on lotion to use the fingerprint. And I'm just like, and she didn't say it like that. Like, it wasn't in a way that was like reasonable and she was really trying to deliver some understanding. It was like, oh yeah, they say people of color got to use the lotion to use the machine. Like, no, I think she said like darker complexion. Like, it was just something that was just so out of pocket. And the thing is, these things are being said because they know that there's no, who's gonna tell them? Who's gonna tell them? And what's gonna happen when I go to human resources and say that, oh, I mean, Jalen, it's not that big of a deal, right? I'm looking problematic. And there's been times, even at previous jobs, where I had coworkers who were stereotyping against me about certain things, and it made me feel very uncomfortable. And I went and I told human resources and I told my managers and all these things. And what ended up happening was I was terminated. My hours were cut short, right? There's always this retaliation that happens in these situations and nobody talks about it. Nobody cares, right? You go to human resources or you go to your manager, they have very little concern, right, for these things. There was also instances where, there's this thing we play music at my job. If I'm playing R&B, right, it's respectful. I'm not playing Lil Baby, nothing like that. Like if you know me, I love soulful music, Anita Baker, Luther Vandross, some Casey, okay, some Jagged Edge. Like I'm playing the cuts, and it's respectful. And I remember my coworker walking over me, telling me to turn it off. We don't want to hear that. The majority of a group doesn't want to hear that. We don't listen to that. I was just so taken back, right? Because I'm like, man, every day I'm sitting here listening to whatever is over there rocking and rolling on that stereo. Like, that's crazy to me, So I just think the truth is that's what's really going on. And people will say, oh, you could just easily stick up to these people. No, we can't, right? Because a lot of times Black people, when we are in these situations, right? People of color, people of minorities, we don't have that authority to just kind of go up here and tell you to shut up and we're going to play what we want to play, and you sit back and you listen, because I sat and listened to all that rah the other day. Like, do you see the position that we'll be put in, right? Because now I'm the angry Black woman, right? Now I'm the angry Black woman. Now it's clear that I'm a problem. Now it's clear that I have an attitude. I'm being unrealistic. I'm being disrespectful. I'm just being flat out angry. You see what I'm saying? But these are the things that happen. And so what I want to say, and I want to share with everybody who may have experienced racism in the workplace, because let's just be honest, when you got responsibilities, you got things you're working on, you may be wanting to be an entrepreneur, but God hasn't given you your ideas yet. You got mouths to feed, you got people dependent on you. You got to take care of yourself, right? It's not always easy to just up and leave a job. Like, as I got older, and just having stability in my own life, I get that now. Like, that's not always the case for some people, though I'm definitely a risk taker and I believe in taking opportunities. I realize that for some people, that's just not the reality for them, right? And I'm not putting any limits on God, but I'm just, I'm speaking to the real here. You know what I mean? So that's not always the case. And so what these situations often do, they kind of have a way of turning your heart towards people, right? And I'm just going to be honest, like, it makes you want to dislike people because of the way in which you have to go through things. So I'm going to tell you guys kind of how to combat that, because what you don't want to do is turn your heart, and you don't want to become the people who hurt you, right? You don't want to become somebody who doesn't like a certain type of race or who stereotypes a certain race because of the things that you're dealing with. So what I had to do was, first of all, prayer. I'm just being honest. I had to pray every day. I have to meditate. I got to get my mind right before I go to work. I got to do my gratitude journal. Like, girl, it's a lot. It's a lot to go up in these workplaces. And I'm laughing, but this is really sad, because it's not fair that we have to come to work and feel so uncomfortable and feel as though we have to really bend and mold and kind of go along to get along. That's not right. And it saddens me, because white people will never have to do that. You'll never have to experience that. You can come to work, be yourself. I have coworkers who come to work and they speak with such profanity, and it's okay. Right? It's funny. It's okay. But I know that I would never be able to do that. I have coworkers who come to work and they'll kind of do that appropriation thing where they're like, what's good? Doing all of that. And I'm like, okay, Rachel, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's cool when you do it, but if I do it, everybody's going to look at me. I'm the temperament in the room changes, right? It's uncomfortable for certain people when I show up as Black, but everybody else can show up as Black though. You know what I mean? It's crazy to me. So I'm just being honest. A lot of times people don't want to have these conversations because they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to see this. But let me just go ahead and get through my tips real quick. So one of the things that I definitely, like I said, after I had to get my mind right to go to work, I realized that through those experiences, God gave me revelation. And my revelation was that these people are ignorant. I'm just being honest. They're ignorant. You don't know what you don't know. So, let me just keep it real, right? I'm just keep it real. Some of these people, like my white coworkers, they've went to college, they've hung out with the same friends who were scholars, who were doctors, who were lawyers, whatever, right? So when you grow up and you don't really have any diversity, you don't have any experience really to counteract some of the stereotypes that you may feel about other races, to combat some of the beliefs you may feel about other races, because you don't really have an understanding, right? I've hung out with the same people since college. I've had the same friends. I went straight to school. I got this job. I've been here for 10 years. I don't know what it's like to do anything outside of this. I've never experienced relationships outside of the ones in which I've always had. I've never sat with people who were in different positions, who were of different races, right? And that's why I was always in great admiration of bigger cities, even though they did foster some level of superficiality. I was in great admiration of big cities because of the inclusion and the diversity, right? You go to New York, you're going to be working with quite a few different people, right? Nobody ain't got time for that, the fact of the matter is that 9 times out of 10 in a bigger city, you're going to have friends of different races because it is so diverse and inclusive. So that was the first revelation, right? Understanding that these people, they're doing what they don't know any better. What do you know? Let's just be honest. What do you know? You don't know anything, right? You don't know anything. You've never had to work with black people to this extent, right? You may have had a black person come in every now and then, but what typically happens in these situations, right? Black people, let's be honest, we end up getting different jobs. Nobody want to deal with this. My homegirl say somebody hiring down the street, they making $1 more, whatever the case may be. I'm out of here, right? Let's just be real, So a lot of times we're not in the position, like we just move around it, right? So you never really had to deal with this, right? So there's ignorance around that, and you have no clue what it's like to be black. And let's be honest, you get on social media, what do you typically see? Right? Algorithms feeding everybody different things. You got people who are sitting up here showing you that black people are murderers and killers and all of these things. So and even the world's lens on black people in general, right? Like it's like the bad is always the forefront. We're aggressive. We're angry, right? So you don't know anything. What do you know? You've never had dinner with a black person. You've never been to their families. You just know what you know. And what they show on the TV, right? Angry, black, poor, ignorant. What do you know, right? So I had to realize that they were ignorant. I'm just going to be honest. They don't know. They're not knowledgeable in regards to our culture and who we are as people in the world, right? Because they never had to experience it, and they don't have to, and they probably never will. So that was the first thing. The second thing I would definitely say is when I realized that I wasn't going to win this battle, because even though I'm having these experiences, I went to my coworkers. I mean, not my coworkers, my manager. No level of concern whatsoever. There's no empathy. Essentially, she told me it would be easier for me to leave the job versus to sit and deal with the lack of inclusivity and the racial slurs and the discrimination. And I had to sit in a space where I realized, okay, she's not equipped for this. And this is why it's funny because I was always against entrepreneurship, right? Like I was just such an artist. I'm like, I don't want anything to be stressful. Like I'm just a free person. I love to do my own thing. I realized that I had never had a boss who was a better manager than me, right? And so I had to realize, okay, my manager is 27 years old, right? Fresh out of pharmacy school, doing her thing. What does she know, right? She's never had to lead a real team. She got this job because she knew people. Let's just be honest, right? I got a few coworkers that we just hired on, and a lot of times, it's connections, right? They're family members of family members. I'm gonna just be real with you. You know what I mean? It's systemic. So when you don't know anything, you never really had to do the work, right? Black people, we got to come in, we got to do the work, or we need to see your whole resume. We need to see the whole nine. But let's just be honest, with white people, you have connections. There are certain things. I'm not saying they don't have to work hard. I'm not saying like anything like that, because I do believe that there are people who don't have handouts, who don't have connections. But I'm talking about this particular situation and the truth of the matter. So, it is what it is. So anyways, what does she know? What does she know? She's never had to handle conflict in between coworkers, right? And like I said, that so many people are willing to go along to get along. But let me just say this first thing and foremost, honey. I am not an angry black woman, though sometimes I do get angry. Quite frankly, I think that everybody has an emotion of anger, but I'm very slow to anger because I believe in that teaching in Proverbs. So I'm very slow to anger. I've never really been a person to get angry. And if I was, I think that I'd probably walk around, slap everybody in the face, right? But I'm not the type of person, right? And I would never hit anybody you know what I mean? Like, that's not me. So I'm very slow to anger. I'm just saying, if I was an angry person, I think it would have festered over at this point of all the things I've went through, right? But I'm not an angry person. So what does she know, right? She's young. There is no real experience outside of that. You don't really know how to handle conflict, right? It's easier to just kind of brush over, right? So we're all learning and growing at the end of the day. And thirdly, what I do to combat this need or this want or that temptation, rather, to combat the temptation of disliking certain people because of the things that they do and trying not to generalize people. I go on YouTube and I listen to people who are not ignorant, who do have a wide variety of friends and who do stand for inclusivity and who do support diversity and who do people who do understand and realize their place in the world and the ways in which they went wrong, right? Like my girl, Jane Elliott. I can't even call her my girl. I mean, she is a historical icon. You know what I mean? The things that she's done, what she stands for, what she represents. I mean, she's truly godsend. I would love to meet her one day. Jane Elliott, I'm coming for you. She's phenomenal. She's an amazing woman. But seeing things like Jane Elliott, Joyce Myers is another one. I've been into Christianity and things like that. So her teachings, her podcast, seeing her on her show, the talk show with the different women and things like that, that to me allows me to recognize that not all people are bad, right? And not all, and even though I don't know them, right? But I can kind of discern like a gist, right? Because I don't know, I've never said her presence, but just the way in which she, her teachings, her principles, her overall just mental philosophies has really allowed me to just kind of be in a space where I recognize, okay, cool, like this, not every person is ignorant. Not every white person is hateful towards Black people. So I think that sometimes it's important to find people who are not like that, right? You know what I mean? And that's what I do, to combat that temptation to become one of them, right? Because it's easier to just say, I'm just going to hate everybody who hates me. But then what kind of life would that be for me? Because honestly, I'm not that type of person. Like, I just am not. Like, I'm a very kind-hearted person. Like, I'm not going to allow my heart to turn cold because of these few bad experiences. And number 4, I would definitely say, understand that every battle is not yours to fight. It's not, I don't believe that God has me on my current job right now to come in here and argue with all of my coworkers and to fight with them. I've learned to just give grace and just have compassion, right? Because I understand, what do they know? What do they know, right? What do you know? You think that, I've had, questions asked, like, was I pregnant? Was I married? Did I have kids? Did I live alone? Like, it's just all of these stereotypes because what do you know? What do you know? I mean, right? I'm the first young Black girl who has overcome a lot of that. You know what I mean? And it's saddening because I think that even in that space, it's not even a matter of overcoming. It's just the systemic hands that are dealt to us. But those are conversations that people just don't want to have. So therefore, that is how you combat racism in the workplace. And you resist that temptation to become the people who hurt you. Don't become them. Like, don't be like that. Like, don't fight fire with fire. Like, fight it with love, fight it with kindness, and move forward. And fifth, I'm gonna give y'all a little bonus here. Number 5, I would definitely say, just understand that this is only temporary. Seasons change, right? This too shall pass. This is here to teach me something. And, you just keep it pushing. Like, don't really sit and internalize a lot of that because, like I said, what do they know? 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 Da, 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 da. Like, what do they know? Right? So don't allow yourself to be angered by ignorance. Like, why would I get upset with people who've never experienced certain things? Like, what do they know? What do they know? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to feel inferior because I know that I know who I am here, right? And so what do they know? You see what I'm saying? So understand that every battle is not yours to fight, and understand that when you go to work, like whatever shift you work, I love my shift. It's like mad early and I'm out of there. I go to work, I do my job, and I go home, honey. I go home. I no longer play the music, right? You see what I'm saying? Everything is just not worth fighting for. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, some things aren't worth fighting for. Now, like I said, I don't play alone to get along. I have my own personal boundaries as to what I'm willing to, bend and be agreeable with, right? But I just realized that some things are just not worth, you know what I mean? I'm just going to be honest. Like, it's just not worth it. So understand that it's just a job, or if it's your career, you need to talk to God. Like, there's got to be something better for you. Because I just don't believe that Black people were created to sit in these systems and be treated this way. I personally do not believe that to be so. So if God gives you a revelation while you are in your career, I'm going to say trust that. I'm going to say trust that. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, when I left a job before, it wasn't because of racism. It was really because of stress. And it just was like too much. Like, I realized that once I left, I did hit the rocks. Like, I totally hit the rocks. I was down and out, but God brought me through, and he birthed something amazing in me, and it was phenomenal, and I wouldn't change that. So I'm saying that to encourage you guys, to, if you are in a career setting, to know that, listen, that ain't what God has for you. I don't believe that God created us to be small and to always play like the backhand to those type situations. Like, that's just not, I don't believe that's what God has called us here to do. So, you're powerful, so understand that and just pray on it, pray on it, and it's going to be fine. But I really do think that this podcast was helpful for anybody who may be dealing with that. You got to know who you are in these situations, man. Like, you got to know who you are when people try to make you feel inferior and when people try to tilt your crown. And you know what I mean? Like, you got to know who you are. Like, just straight up. You know what I mean? You got to find that for you, because people will always put you in a box, especially if you're Black. Let's just be honest. So be excellent. I always say that. I made a video on Instagram. Be excellent, man. Like, always exceed expectations of you. You know what I mean? It's not a matter of being hard on yourself. But like I said in the previous podcast episode, you have to hold yourself accountable. This is not college. This is life. You know, you may not have accountability partners. You may not have mentors just yet. Right. You need to be willing and ready to check yourself and put yourself in position so that you can excel and go far beyond that, you know, and it's possible, you know, with God, everything's possible, right? So don't fight, you know, just, hey, you know what I mean? Because I just think that certain things are in position to make you feel less powerful. And so you have to understand when there are just some things you just cannot fight, right? Like, if it's designed that way, there are so many cards stacked against you. And though I believe that there's always triumph in those situations, like you can do all things, like I said, but just know who you are. Know who you are, and you won't even, like, you know, get that to God. That has nothing to do with you, right? These are people who go home and, hey, who knows how they're really living their lives, right? Clearly, they're not happy. So I think even in that sense right there, that should bring you some solace to know that God is just, right? Sometimes situations in life is not fair, but God is just, okay? Justice will be served, right? Let the Lord handle that, and you go on about your life, all right? Don't let my tattoo says that, you know what I mean? Don't become the people who hurt you, right? And it actually says don't become them, but that's the overall meaning of the tattoo that I got. Don't become the people that hurt you. So I'm probably going to name this podcast episode that. And I hope everybody has an amazing day, man. Don't let them break you. To my brothers and my sisters and my kings and queens out there, know who you are, baby. You got to know who you are, all right? Like, listen, come on now. Like, seriously, you got to know who you are because the world will try to tell you who you are, and they will try to make you feel that way, you know, but that's not who you are. You know, you're so much bigger, better, and more powerful than that. And quite frankly, I think that, right, when you have haters, come on now, when you got haters, hey, you got to know you're doing something right, because ain't nobody hating on nobody who ain't doing nothing. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to, you know, I ain't trying to step on your toes, but I'm just saying you got to know how you're rocking and rolling and how you're coming and let you know, hey, it is what it is, right? You know, it is what it is. I'm coming in here with my, what? You know, every tactic, you know what I mean? You got to dodge them. Come on now, get your duck game on point. Understand that every battle is just not yours to fight. All right. So that is my tips on how to deal with racism in the workplace, and don't become them, and stay strong, stay powerful, and know that you got this. Come on, man. You know who you are. We're strong, Black, beautiful creatures. Like, we can do this. We're powerful. OK, so I hope everybody has an amazing day. And I hope you got some decisions to make. You know, I really hope that this helped you. You know what I mean? And encouraged you and inspired you. All right.